Designed, built, and operated by the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab, NASA's Parker Solar Probe is flying closer to the Sun than any other spacecraft before. It will pass by the Sun 24 times, solving age-old mysteries surrounding the origins of the solar wind and other activity that affects life on Earth. What makes this mission possible is a unique trajectory with flights past Venus, which shape the probe's orbit and set its course toward the Sun. Without them, there is no mission and no great discoveries. So why is Venus so important to a mission to the Sun? It all comes down to power. The truth is, no rocket could supply the amount of power required to get Parker Solar Probe as close to the Sun as it needs to be. So we need to borrow force from Venus. It sounds like science fiction, but in reality, spacecraft can leverage the gravity of other planets to speed up, like a slingshot, or to slow down, like tapping the brakes. This is called a gravity assist maneuver, or a gravity assist. A planetary gravity assist changes a spacecraft's heliocentric speed by rotating the direction of the spacecraft's flyby velocity. Parker Solar Probe will use 7 Venus gravity assist maneuvers over its mission to dive closer and closer to the Sun. As Parker Solar Probe speeds towards Venus, it flies in front of the planet to slow down, kind of like swimming against a current. This actually allows the spacecraft to leave a little of its momentum with Venus as it zips by. The flyby alters Parker Solar Probe's orbit, sometimes by millions of miles, sending it closer to the Sun. This technique is actually nothing new. In fact, several spacecraft have used gravity assists over the years, including Voyager, Messenger, and New Horizons. At its closest point, within 4 million miles of the Sun's surface, the probe will be moving 430,000 miles per hour, fast enough to get from Philadelphia to Washington, D.C. in 1 second. It's all thanks to the Parker Solar Probe mission team, who makes sure everything stays on track during this historic exploration. Gravity assists are part of the unprecedented, record-breaking mission to uncover the secrets of our star. For Parker Solar Probe, it's the fastest, most accurate, and most efficient way to fly.
Hello, everyone. This is Scott Roberts with Explore Scientific and the Explore Alliance, and we're back. It is day 3 of the 2024 Astronomical League convention that's being held in Overland Park, Kansas. We're with Kent Martz and Dr. Stuart Riley, who's going to discuss the Sun. Kent?
Thanks, Scott. Stuart was giving his talk, and I walked in there and sat down to try and catch a piece of it after our last interview. And I was looking at him going, man, the name's familiar. He looks familiar.
It does at that.
and so I pulled up his
why? I mean, why is he so familiar?
I pulled up his biography to read about him, so I'd be prepared for the interview.
Yeah.
He's one of the early members or founding member of Sugar Creek Astronomical Society.
There you go.
That I founded. And he lived in Northwest Arkansas, and we were club members together. Yes. And it was like, bingo. And
that's right.
About the old
and he used to come in to Explore Scientific. So
back before the original store, back when it was just a warehouse in Springdale, he would come in. Yeah. So it's a small world, and it's awesome to renew a friendship here. It is. So your talk today during the convention was on solar observing and solar photography. Correct. So just give me that 10,000 foot view of what your speech was about.
Okay, so unlike night photography or daytime photography, other things that are not of interest to us, photographing or imaging or even drawing the sun requires some very special talents, meaning you need to know how you could find the sun. You need to know how to observe the sun, meaning safely. And you'd also like to be able to know what you've observed. So you need to know a little bit about what's on the sun and what effects are near the sun. And so my talk basically described the safety features, the planning features, and the necessary steps in order for a person to either be part of the Astronomical League programs or awards, or for their own personal satisfaction. There is no one solution that fits all.
Like, there's all sorts of different kind of hammers,
Yes,
and you have to pick the hammer you need for your job. You know, and we can't stress safety enough. You know, when you look at Venus, it's bright, but it's not gonna put your eye out. You know, you look at a full moon with a telescope and it maybe doesn't feel good, but it's not gonna blind you. The sun is gonna blind you if you're not careful. So I caution people, and I know, I'm sure you do too, and it's not to scare them, it's just to give them the warning to proceed careful, right?
absolutely. My one experience that I've had with the sun that was not a positive one was at Big Bear Solar Observatory in California. They have a two-story reflecting and or image enhancing feature of the sun to be projected down onto a flat table 2 stories below. And the reflector and or the safety precautions that was taking care of that safety broke. And 3 of us in the room were flooded with an immense amount of very magnified high intensity light. The sun is a minus 26.4 magnitude. Our brightest star in the night sky is maybe a 1.0, maybe a 1.1, which means the magnitudes are not even near like us. And we call the moon maybe a magnitude, maybe -3.
3, right? I was thinking -3.
So the sun is not something that you fool with. It's to recognize literally. And also damage things like cameras, telescopes, if you actually focus in on the sun and you don't have the problem.
So with that warning, there's plenty of ways to safely observe the sun.
Yes,
And you know, the National Park Service, I used this earlier and I'll use it again. The National Park Service has a phrase of something like half the park is after dark.
yes,
Well, half of astronomy is during the daytime.
Right.
And you know, we have a star close by, which we can look at all day long. We can do it safely, and it's fascinating to look at it in white light, hydrogen alpha,
yes.
other ways to look at it. And so talk about that.
Okay. So sun has actually introduced us to a lot more knowledge that we have about seeing it in the stars at night. We have a medium-sized sun that has produced a lot of energy. We're now better understanding how the magnetic and seismic effects of the sun affects Earth. Therefore, we could also understand how other planetary systems that are not in our solar system, in our Milky Way, are also being affected by those gigantic monsters. The gigantic monsters are like BYBs that have approximately 10,000 to 1 size sun to its size, which means it's producing a tremendous amount of light, a lot of lethal rays, and there is no such thing as a safe spot.
There's no Goldilocks zone for that star.
Go for that stuff. And so for us to understand what's in the other parts of the universe, we have to understand how our sun operates. Without it, we'd be basically trying to find the tail of the elephant when we're all blind.
So talk about what you can see with a solar safe telescope in white light. Let's talk about white light.
Sure. Well, the most foremost is that you can see the granulation on the surface, meaning you get to see the bubbles. I used to call it, it's kind of like watching boiling oatmeal.
To me, it looks almost like orange peel. You know, that rough texture of orange peel. It's how I see it.
Another good one. You could also see what we call solar sun spots that have of the inner part that is darker. Now, a point of piece there with the umbra is measured around about 5,000 degrees. The penumbra around about 5,400 degrees, and the surface at 6,000 degrees.
And the point of it is, it's cooler, you know,
It's not
and
cold.
it looks black, but if the surface only because of the filtering we use.
Right.
If you were standing next to the umbra, the dark part of a sunspot, it'd still vaporize you because it's still
Very
really
hot.
hot,
Very,
just
very
not
hot.
as hot, right?
Now, to understand the other parts, we have to switch from white light either to what they call hydrogen alpha or calcium, depending, again, it's frequencies on the electromagnetic spectrum. The more that you want to see in the visible band, that is hydrogen alpha, hydrogen, and has more of the exposure that is red, then you can actually see things as solar prominence. You can see faculae, you can see solar spikes, you could see the ribbons that go away from one sunspot to another. You could see solar ejections like solar flares. And the largest one caught is about 5 days ago. It went out from the surface of the sun about 380,000 kilometers. That's about the distance between Earth and the moon.
Yeah.
So if we were that close to the sun, we'd be cooked.
Yeah. So what I like about sunspots is out in space, when you look through a telescope, if one of the moons of Jupiter is close to the disk of Jupiter, you can actually see it moving. You can see movement. You can see the terminator line on the moon move as it rotates, and you can watch the shadow move. And out there in the darkness, you'll see a little white thing, and it'll get brighter and bigger, and you realize it's the top of a mountain that's showing up. You can see that move. You can see sunspots move. Otherwise, there's not much moves up there in the sky, at a scale that we can see over years or even centuries.
Correct.
With the sun, you can look at the sun and see a funny little area, and you realize it's changing, and all of a sudden it turns black a little bit. You can watch sunspots,
Yes.
and you can watch them grow and change shape and move.
Correct.
I find that fascinating.
That is the greatest part about what not only the astronomy. Asking you to daily draw it, observe it, photograph it, and observe it. Because you'll see that it has motion, it changes. It has changing in the morphology of the sunspot itself, but it also helps us to understand how something would grow and how something would die. It's not all sunspots will stay.
Oh, they all die eventually.
They do.
They have life cycles.
It's a life cycle.
Go ahead.
The other point, that sunspots are not a given, okay? You might say, well, they have the minimum and they have the maximum. The maximum will see more, less. If there was a period in about the time of Newton for 70 years, nothing happened. They don't know what happened. That's usually when they do what they call a magnetic pole shift, goes north to south, south to north. So they don't know what happened.
And didn't it cause the Little Ice Age?
It did,
It caused what was called the Little Ice Age back
Yes.
in the 1700s.
right,
Yeah, and which affected weather around the world.
yes.
And some people, if I remember, boy, this is some long ago reading, but attribute part of the success of the colonists to the weather it created here that the European troops weren't used to and didn't know how to cope with,
Correct,
and had an effect on the founding of the country.
right.
And
Absolutely.
just fascinating how that connects.
And so we also learn a lot about how to protect ourselves in space.
Right.
So solar filtration in terms of visibly helping to protect our eyes, but we also understand that there's other very harmful, from ultraviolet to X-ray
Very
to
hot,
cosmic,
Very
hot,
energetic.
very
particles.
particles.
Right.
And we have to constantly think about those that we plan to send other parts of our solar system. That is a factor that we learned from our sun.
So earlier today, we had a speech about, colonizing the moon and Mars. The moon doesn't have an atmosphere, a very, very absolutely
Very little.
tenuous atmosphere. It does not have a magnetic core that creates radiation belts that can shield it.
Right.
To live on the moon, you've got to be able to manage the solar radiation and solar storms. And just this week, we read about some pretty darn good proofs of lava tubes,
Yes.
200 and 300 feet below the surface, which are really good shelters
Yes.
and places to actually live on
Right.
the moon. Is, we want to think about, they were talking about 3D printing
Right.
with a regolith and making houses on the moon,
Right.
basically.
Right.
A better answer may be to live underground, where you're shielded and with already made shielded habitat.
As they say, living on the surface is dull.
Right. You can, if you've ever heard of Cooper Pedy out in Australia, where it's so hot, every house effectively is underground. Very similar situation.
Yes.
The hotness being the radiation, not the temperature necessarily.
Exactly.
Right.
And so the thing that I could say about our studies on the solar plane, so to speak, are as a stepping stone to go further beyond our solar system. Because it will take a great amount of time for us to travel, but you want to make sure that you get there,
Baby steps,
baby steps.
baby steps.
And so to have the rockets, the energy, the life-sustaining materials necessary, you need to be able to keep all that safe.
You think back, I mean, it's like the sailors, the European sailors and the Polynesian sailors, they didn't just strike off across the Pacific for the Polynesians. They learned, they took steps from out until finally they managed to conquer vast distances.
Yes.
Magellan circumnavigating, first Westerners circumnavigate, that was a journey into the unknown. I mean, there were many ships that left somewhere never to be seen or heard from again.
Yes.
And at least it was astronomy now. If a ship leaves and something happens, we hear about it real fast.
Usually. Yeah. So that also led to the other sciences like cartography, which we were able to find out that we can we can define what's out in the solar system as we observe movement in the solar system, even though we're not there. But as we're able to go further, we're not going to have the healing effects, if you will, or even the protection from our magnosphere when we go in those spaceships.
Right.
So we have to be able to create an equivalent magnosphere around the ships.
Space is a very unforgiving place to try for human life.
Yeah.
To survive for any extended period of time.
There's no second chances for goofos.
Nope. And so, you be very careful in this. So what do you get out of doing solar astronomy?
To me, it has been what excited me from the very onset was our sun is a dynamic environment. You might say, well, don't you get to see it every day and see the same thing? And the answer is there has never been one sunspot exactly like any other ever. In all the recorded history and all the data that we've reduced. Why? Is the magnetic fields and the electronic, the energy from both the current and the magnetic fields are so changing drastically, and they vary in size that they're basically a good proof of chaos theory.
Sure, it's the sun. It's the same sun we had yesterday and the same sun we're going to have tomorrow.
Yep.
But it's different every day.
Yes.
While it's the same, it's different every day.
That nuclear engine that's driving all the energy that gives us our life support also is what also makes the unknown of the unknown.
Right.
Because we don't know from the next day or whenever that we're going to have a strike that comes at us from the sun, not intentionally, but just happens because that's sun energy.
So Stuart, a few minutes ago, has made reference to observing programs. The Astronomical League has observing programs, like there's 78 or now, something like that. 70 something programs you can do, observing the Messier object with telescopes, binoculars, constellation observing, catalogs, the Herschel. I'm not going to details of what the Herschels are, but there's all sorts of awards you can win by doing sketching.
Yes.
One of them, you were telling me there's now 6 or 7 different solar observing programs. So if you're a member of the Astronomical League, you can get awards and rewarded for going out and doing some observing.
Yes.
That entails either joining an astronomical astronomy club, like your club that we have in common was Sugar Creek Astronomical Society, or the Astronomical Society of Kansas City, or the Tucson Area Amateur Astronomers, TAAA. They're all over the place. You can Google astronomy club in your town or your area, find one, join the club, become an Astronomical League member through the club, and you have access to these programs. But by the club, you also have access to people like Stuart, who can shepherd you through this process of learning to look at
Absolutely.
whatever you want to look at.
Absolutely.
So much easier with a mentor,
And,
with a person that guides you.
and I found that when I was mentored by some very high level scientific minds, their interest in me was to keep asking the questions of why does it do that? How come?
You were curious.
I was curious.
Curiosity.
And so they fostered that curiosity such that you aren't just sated with, oh, here's the answer.
Okay. And going down the road.
Yeah.
Right. And you're living proof. You're a cool cat.
Yep.
Curiosity did not kill the cool cat.
Right.
Right. Okay. What if somebody wants to get into amateur astronomy or to get into solar astronomy? What do they do?
First, understand what intrigues you. Say that you've gone out and you've looked at a solar eclipse, you've looked at a or maybe a total, and you say, well, that was neat. I wish I could do that more often. How can I learn more? Well, there's so much more that you can do just beyond waiting for an eclipse. You can do so much more to be able to go find areas of where you can find the eclipses. Now, they occur all across the earth and the globe at all different times, different periods. So you don't have to live just in the United States. You can become a world traveler to find those eclipses. And we do have people that are in the clubs that do that.
Go to everyone they can.
Everyone they can. You might say it's kind of an obsession, but actually it's not. It is. It's answering that. It's like what it was in Europe. Was it like what it is in Africa? Here it is in North America. How is it different? How did it happen? Did it occur? It was a longer period, it was shorter. You might say, well, is that all there is to solar? Is just watching, observing solar eclipses? The answer is no. Being able to help the science community, they sometimes request people to go in and look at their gathered data from the solar probes that are in the sky, that orbit our Earth all the time. And they get megabytes, like into the petabytes data that they don't have the resources to use. So if you have an interest in solar, solar helioseismometric study of how the sun rings when it
Rings like a bell.
rings like a bell. That's one effort. The other is to also find out what would happen if it were hit by a comet. Now, something like Jupiter would say, ooh, we've been hit. We show a plume. And the sun, we don't know what happens. We've never had anything large enough to hit it that would cause it to perturb.
It so far as just eating everything that's come close to it. It eats it.
It has,
It's just gone.
but we don't know. So I would say science, solar sciences never has ended.
Right. All right. So I think the last session may be getting over with because the door's open and we can go on forever. Stuart, I'm so glad you were here so we can reconnect. Man.
Yes,
It disproves it's a small world.
it is.
So, the sun is half the hobby if you want it to be. Find somebody to help you mentor, do your research on your favorite search engine. There's ways to do it safely. Here to Explore Scientific, we sell a go-to mount with a small telescope that comes with a solar filter and an eyepiece that is real easy to get started and it won't cost you too much money. you can hook your existing DSLR camera up to it and start doing solar photography with it. The entry level is not too bad. The one caution is make sure you know what you're doing before you do it. Make a plan, check the plan, test the plan, execute the plan. The eclipse got you interested.
Yeah.
Take that interest on down the road and get into doing some solar astronomy or solar photography. There's great rewards out there for it. Scott, do you have any questions?
I have no questions. I'm really glad to see Stuart here. And I really appreciate him sharing his knowledge with us and our audience. And hopefully we don't make it such a long span of time before we get to meet up again. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so Scott, a little future planning. There's one session going on right now that I'm
Okay.
gonna get somebody, so we're gonna have one more, and we're probably the Astronomical League background is probably gonna disappear.
Fine.
To start
Okay.
packing up and get ready so they don't have to, scramble when the banquet starts here this evening.
Sure.
I think we're
Sure.
gonna have one more here fairly quickly. And that'll wind up our broadcast for the day. It's really been a full day today, Scott.
Yeah, and some really interesting people, including Dr. Riley here. So, there's so much that amateur astronomy has to offer, including, I mean, some of the aspects that some of the people who do outreach don't are maybe a little afraid to touch on, but it is the wellness aspect of doing astronomy, and we have several friends. I'm not going to say who it was, but I was just chatting with a friend who is a excellent amateur astronomer, but has fallen into a state of depression. And I believe personally that stargazing, just being out there and being in tune, or letting yourself somehow try to be in tune with the sky, kind of slows down your heart, reduces your anxiety, and starts to release a little bit of the endorphins and stuff like that we feel as amateur astronomers. I mean, all of us that do this know of this feeling that we get, when you're under this kind of temple of the sky, so to speak, and this feeling of connectedness, and these kinds of things. So
you also talk about
and you can
forest
get
bathing.
that from doing a solar astronomy or anything that starts to those feelings of wonder, and so.
You also talked about the benefits of forest bathing, a Japanese concept. I
Yeah,
love
I mean,
being out in
it's
the
the same
woods.
thing. It is the same thing, the feeling of being connected to nature, and astronomers get that in double doses, and so, I always encourage anyone that is kind of going through times of struggle or anxiety or whatever, is to get out, do it safely, do it with a club, but get out with friends, family, whatever, and just or just go out into your backyard and stargaze and wonder what's out there. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. All right, Scott,
Okay.
we'll be back on here hopefully in a little while and get one more broadcast squeezed in today and call it a convention until next year when we're at Bryce Canyon out in Utah.
Bryce Canyon. Yeah, that's going to be cool. Yeah.
Good. It'll be busy. I suspect that'll have a huge attendance just because of
The last time we did it, Terry Mann ran this program, and I think she'll be quite involved this time. It was just fabulous. I mean, super dark skies, so dark that you can see your own shadow from the Milky Way light. So,
and people don't believe me when I tell them that. They get up in Nebraska.
you have to see it to believe it, but
I'm
it's
gonna get a
there.
picture of it this year. I'll be going up, leaving next weekend.
Yeah.
So I'm in the office next week, and that weekend going up to Nebraska for the following week. I'm going to get a picture of it. And this broadcast rig has worked so well, Scott.
Yeah.
We may try and do some of this from up there. I think we should.
Oh, sure. Yeah,
do some
shouldn't
live
be any problem
broadcast,
with that.
as opposed to previous years, we've done videotape and I've sent it to you, not videotape, but recorded on the phone and sent it to you. I think we'll try and do some live broadcasts from up there as well.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
And Scott, these are being archived on the YouTube, right? These are available.
Yeah, they'll be like in a they're being included on a playlist on YouTube. So you just go to the official Explore Scientific channel and you can find the 2024 talks there. So thank you very much, Dr. Riley. And anytime you're back in the area, please stop by.
I will.
Okay. All
I
right.
miss
Thank
that
you.
area.
All right. Okay, I want to thank the audience for tuning in as well. There is a special discount code that you can use. So all you got to do is read the text that goes along with this video. And if you're so inclined and need a piece of equipment that we sell, you can just get a better deal now for a limited time. So thanks very much, and we will see you later.